Good afternoon, everyone. Maintaining your mental and physical health is a key element in the recipe for success and happiness, but this can often be a difficult thing to achieve due to the abundance of threats to health in all aspects of life. Unfortunately, every time you choose to participate in sexual relations with another individual, which is a natural part of life, you are potentially putting yourself at risk of being given an array of sexually transmitted diseases and infections, such as human immunodeficiency virus, also known as HIV. While illness is everywhere around us these days, viruses like HIV pose very dangerous risks and side effects and should be dealt with in a serious manner. In order to effectively prevent the spread of HIV and keep everyone safe and healthy, there must be a unifying change to current policy, which is currently left up to each individual state to determine. Reform must happen, and due to the severity and implications of the disease, the availability of assistance programs to help disclose your status, and the inadequate policy currently in action, one that encompasses the needs of America while still taking the HIV-positive citizens into consideration is necessary and attainable. In order to further explain the symptoms and extent of the disease, I would like to direct you all to a PowerPoint presentation. Since HIV was discovered in 1981, it has swept across the world, infecting approximately 76 million people, and is considered an epidemic. According to some of the most recent studies done by the CDC, approximately 1.2 million people are currently living with HIV in the United States, and in 2018 alone, 37,968 new cases were diagnosed. Of these cases, 14%, or 1 in 7 people, didn't even know they had HIV. After being infected with HIV, which can happen through sexual intercourse, sharing needles, or even passed on through childbirth, there are many short-term symptoms that may be present, but the long-term effects are more worrisome since the disease affects the body's immune system and progresses through 3 stages. Stage 1 is the acute infection. Some people do not experience any initial symptoms of the disease, but others experience flu-like symptoms. This stage is very dangerous because of the large amounts of HIV in the blood that make it easy to transmit to others. Stage 2, the chronic infection, can last almost a decade or longer without treatment. People still may not have symptoms during this stage, but the virus continues to reproduce, attack new cells, and damage the immune system. If the disease has progressed into a stage 3 infection, which is also known as AIDS, the immune system is severely damaged, and that person is at a high risk of catching co-infections and opportunistic infections, such as hepatitis, herpes simplex virus, salmonella, pneumonia, certain cancers, meningitis, and more, which could all lead to death for an immunocompromised individual. Luckily, with the treatment options available in the United States today, most cases that are treated early on never progress past stage 2. The outcome of the disease with and without treatment is drastically different, which is why it is crucial that you are aware of the illness, if not before you get it, as soon after exposure as possible. With the current policy on HIV disclosure in some states, an infected individual could be spreading the disease to numerous people who would most likely not find out for some time. In order to stop the pandemic, change must come quickly. Some may argue that an individual should never be legally obligated to disclose their medical information, but they should be obligated if it could lead to the possible death of another. Now that everyone is aware of the severity of the disease, I'd like to talk about the disclosure process. As explained in a peer-reviewed psychology paper on AIDS behavior, it can be very difficult, physically and mentally, to disclose your HIV status to previous and possible sexual partners, but this should not be used as an excuse for the government to continue with inadequate policy. All around the United States, health departments have introduced disclosure assistance programs to help patients with the emotional difficulty of telling sexual partners about their HIV status. If you receive a positive test at the department, you will have the opportunity to give the names of previous sexual partners, and they will call them for you. Your name will not be given to any of the listed individuals, only information regarding their possible exposure, and a recommendation to come in for testing. Unfortunately, telling future sexual partners about the HIV status can also be difficult, and it has been argued that being legally obligated would deter people from getting tested in the first place. To help combat this issue, I propose an addition to the disclosure assistance programs that will help HIV patients taking antiretroviral therapy explain the possible risks associated with sexual activity to possible partners. As shown in the PowerPoint presentation, studies have shown that antiretroviral therapy medication can suppress the virus to an untraceable amount in the blood, making the possibility of transmission equivalent to 1 in 150,000 sexual partners. Information like this will be explained while still warning them that the transmission is possible, so that they will have all of the facts necessary to be able to decide for themselves whether or not they are willing to take the risk. After explaining the reasons why disclosure is necessary and possible, without imposing significant threats to the mental health of the patients, I would like to explain current policy regarding the issue and my proposal for policy change. According to the CDC, as of 2020, the 50 states plus the District of Columbia can be categorized into 4 categories based on laws for HIV exposure. Out of 51, 26 states have HIV-specific laws that criminalize or control behaviors that can potentially expose another person to HIV. 11 states have STD laws that criminalize or control behaviors that can potentially expose another person to STDs, including HIV. 3 states have sentence enhancement laws specific to HIV or STDs that do not criminalize a behavior but increase the sentence length when a person with HIV commits certain crimes. And 11 states have no specific criminalization laws at all. With policy differing throughout the country, the possibility of ending the HIV epidemic won't be attainable. I propose a federal policy criminalizing the failure to disclose HIV status to all previous and future partners because of the serious potential threat to human health it could cause. Assistance programs, as described, will be instituted at every local health department across the United States, and those with HIV will be urged to use them to avoid legal issues. And to avoid false accusations of exposure without disclosure, HIV patients will be urged to disclose in writing and/or to contact the local health department and ensure that they follow up with the individuals in order to have proof of disclosure in the event of a legal case. In conclusion, the United States is divided in policy, and significant change will not occur under these conditions. Reform must and can happen due to the severity and implications of the disease, the possible risk of death, the availability of disclosure assistance programs, and the inadequate policy currently in action. And the new policy that I have proposed will sufficiently meet the needs of America while still taking the HIV-positive citizens' mental health into consideration.